This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this one comes from Tucker Heron, who asks a classic question. Tucker notices that there are some left-wing economists, socialists, and others, who are passionately for or against free trade versus protection when it comes to international trade. And then there are others who'd either take the opposite position, favoring free trade over protection versus the other way around, or seem to discard the whole issue, refusing to take a position either way. And Tucker wonders, what is my position? What would I argue is a socialist position on free trade? Let me respond by urging those of you that have the time and the interest to go find a relatively short essay written in the second half of the 19th century by this fellow you may have heard of, Karl Marx. And it has a simple title, On Free Trade. And it is a speech he gave, it's the written version of a speech he gave on that subject. And I think to this day, it has the best, clearest exposition that I know of. So let's begin. Let's first start by being sure we're all on the same page. Free trade simply means that a person in this country, say the United States, is free to import goods and services made in other countries into this one to use them, to consume them, or to sell them as he or she sees fit. And that likewise a person in this country is free to do the opposite, to export goods and services produced here into other countries without limit, without constraint, without regulation. The trade is as free across the national border as presumably it is within the national borders. That's sort of what free trade means. Protection is then more or less the opposite. It's when I am not free, when I am limited in one way or another. In the extreme case, I am forbidden either to import something produced elsewhere or to export something to elsewhere that was produced here. Short of being forbidden, I might have to pay a special kind of tax, an export tax if that's what I do, or a tariff if I bring things into this country. There may be quotas, you can bring so much, but not more than that, and so on. Various steps of protecting. And the idea of protection, the reason the word is used, is that usually the justification for doing this is to protect a domestic industry. Simplest example. Suppose you have an industry in this country that makes shirts, and that on average they cost $30 to make. Now suppose you can get an equivalent shirt made in Indonesia for $10, and you bring it into this country, you charge an extra $2 to cover the shipping, and then you can sell it for $13, $14, $15. The imported good will destroy the market for the domestic good. To protect the domestic shirt industry, you put a tariff or a quota or a prohibition to protect your own industry from the foreign competition. So, then the question becomes, where should leftists come down on this subject, free trade versus protection? And to give you an idea, a sizable number of American left-wing economists have been very critical over recent decades of the United States' position towards China, allowing mostly free trade so that Americans could import cheap Chinese goods that outcompeted domestically American-made goods. And the point these left-wing economists made was that you were destroying the jobs of Americans, and you were doing this in order to enable the American companies that went to China to produce that stuff to make an extra profit because they could get away with paying much lower wages in China. The story is completely true, but the question is, what does it mean, and what does a left-winger have to say about it? Marx's argument, which I am simply here paraphrasing, runs this way. The fight over free trade versus protection is a fight among capitalists. Some are going to make money if you have free trade and lose money if there's protection, and vice versa. The capitalists who produce at home want protection most of the time. The capitalists that sell a lot of stuff made here in other countries, they don't want the United States to have tariffs and protection for fear that other countries will do to the Americans what the Americans are doing to the companies or the production that's done overseas. So it's a fight between two sets of capitalists. Those who stand to profit from free trade push for that, and those who stand to profit from protection, they push for that. They both know that they're going to have to go to the president, to the Congress, to whatever the legislative authority is, and get the laws passed that either will or won't protect, either will or won't have free trade. When they go into the political arena, they need mass support. And here comes the problem. They go to the working class, whom both sets of capitalists are normally busily exploiting, because that's where the profit comes from. The workers produce more for the employer than the employer pays them. That's how the system works. But now they need the worker. So they come into the worker with all kinds of arguments. You, worker, come with me, the protectionist, because you'll be better off. If we protect the industry, you can keep your job. In comes the free trader. Don't be fooled, says the free trading capitalist to the workers. You should support me because I can bring in cheaper goods and your dollar will go further in the supermarket and the department store because I'm bringing in cheap goods. These are hustles, Marx argues. Workers have a problem, and that problem is capitalism. Whether they're exploited by a group of exporters or they're exploited by a group of importers is really very secondary, Marx argues. If for strategic political alliance reasons you want to side as a working class with one or another group of capitalists, maybe because they'll give you something in return for your support, okay, that's political horse trading. But philosophically, in terms of basic strategy, the response of the working class is, that's not our problem. Our problem is capitalism, not the fight between one group of capitalists and another. Free trade versus protection is about a fight between capitalists who want each of them to make profit, who want each of them to rip us off as workers and make a profit that way. We're not going to take sides. That's not a strategic value for us. Yeah, we'll make a tactical alliance if and when it's advantageous. But basically, our focus is on going beyond capitalism so that we're not ripped off. We are not going to be reduced to choosing which group of capitalists is in the driver's seat ripping us off. I hope you understand the argument here, and thank you very much for your question, and thanks, of course, to the Patreon community for their invaluable ongoing support.